Hello my friends and welcome back to the channel. Andrew at Microphonic Designs here. It is currently Tuesday, October 5th, and this is episode number 2 of my October vlogs doing audio for marching band. Today, it's actually about noon. It's actually noon on the dot right now. And I'm starting the video a few hours before we actually leave for rehearsal because we got some requests to do sound design. So for Aledo, I actually handled their entire sound design package, working alongside Jeff Ostemore to do the, it's like a part of the percussion book, the percussion score. And I had a lot of fun doing this particular show. A lot of samples went into this one, several hundred actually. We did a lot of round robin stuff in main stage. So their setup, their synthesizer setup comprises of 2 MIDI controllers and a laptop and some really good synth kiddos that have been doing a great job covering those parts this year. So this afternoon we are actually working on a couple sound effects. We got a couple requests. I know that in their ballad we need to come up with a new sound effect for kind of a transition moment. So at letter C in their ballad we're going to put a sample in there, and then we're going to do sort of a transition sample going into the next letter in that same movement. And then we also got the request, let's see, in their closing movement, we need to get some impactful bass sounds and make sure that we've got more sub support. So basically the plan of attack here is going to be to open up the main stage concert here at home. I'm going to look around and kind of get an idea for what instruments and sounds I want to implement for the part 5 stuff, and that I'm going to write it down, and then when we get out there today, we're just going to load those sounds up into the concert that they have. And in addition to that, we're going to drag and drop the samples for the ballad. And some other cool stuff is that I'm actually going to be bringing a laptop with me today, and we're going to hook the Aledo laptop, my laptop, up to my Wi-Fi router that we saw in the last video that I bring with me everywhere. And we're actually able to control the Aledo laptop remotely, so it's really cool. So I can make changes to the main stage concert that the group is using from sort of up front, up top, so that I don't have to run back to the synth cart every time we have a change. So I'm going to open up Logic Pro. I'm going to get started on creating the sound effect for their ballad. Then I'm going to open up main stage and get started with finding some different support instruments that we can load into there. And then finally, it'll be time to hit the road. It's a long drive down to Aledo from where I live. I basically live up in the north of Little Elm, Texas, just east of Denton. So it's quite a drive, and we'll probably be leaving here in about 3 hours, at about 3 o'clock. So I'm going to get to work, and I'll see you guys in the car. Okay, finally pulling out onto the main road. So let's talk about the Aledo audio setup. Certainly much more involved than what we saw at Lebanon Trail yesterday in episode number 1, the last video. So Aledo actually has, we'll kind of start with, I guess we'll start with the sound sources. So we've got, I believe, the standard Audio-Technica AT2035, and I say standard, some people use SM57s, whatever. But at Aledo and most of the schools that I work with, we're using the Audio-Technica 2035 underneath the vibraphones and marimbas. And they have, I believe, 5 marimbas and 4 or 5 vibes out at Aledo. And so we've got the marimbas in the front row, the vibraphones in the back row, and I believe one of the marimbas has a DTX on it, and then one of the back row vibraphones actually has a Roland SP404. So we've got a couple samples going through both of those that were written in for those parts, because we couldn't really fit them in with the synthesizer part. And then I've got 2 modular snakes going from the marimbas over to the synth cart. So there's 2 synth carts which are over on side 2. So if you're from the director viewpoint, they're over on the right. And I've got 2 modular snakes where the XLR microphone cables kind of meet in the front row and the back row, going over to the synthesizer carts. And then in the main, I guess, front synth cart, we've got a Behringer S30, actually it's 2 S16s. So instead of one big S32, It's 2 of the 16 input stage boxes that Behringer makes to accompany the X32, because that's the mixer that they have. And then we've got the laptop, the main stage rig, going just directly out of the audio interface. And it's actually a little weird how we have to have it set up, but the short of it is that we've got 1/4 inch out of the interface to XLR into one of the S16s. And then we just added 2 stage mics, which I don't know if they're technically stage mics yet, but they're soloist mics over on side 2, and we have those XLR cables just come straight into the stage box. And then from there, we just run EtherCon. We run an EtherCon cable from the synth cart out to the X32 in the mixer cart. And then from there, this is where it gets extra interesting. Well, maybe not really. They've got 4 individual QSC speakers. So we've got 4 zones, but really what it is, it's a stereo pair, but with extended reach. So basically we send the left signal to the 2 stacks on the side 1, and the right signal out to the 2 stacks on side 2, and that's it. So a little bit more involved with how we're doing things, actually using digital audio and using a digital audio network. I can't remember what protocol Behringer uses. It's definitely not Dante, it's not AVB, it's the other one. And as far as the actual electronic sound design goes, it's definitely much more involved. In fact, there's 2 synthesizer parts. We've got 2 MIDI controllers hooked up to that laptop, and one of the parts is pretty much dedicated to nothing but samples that I cut and wrote. And so usually what I'll do, at least with the shows that call for this level of sound design, I'll basically end up scrapping a large part of what the percussion arranger wrote and then putting in samples where it goes. Now in the case of Aledo, the synth player that handles most of the sound effects and most of the triggered samples, he's actually good enough to handle a part where he's got, I think it's samples in the left hand and then playable instrument written part in the right. So I was able to keep the upper octaves of what Jeff Ostemore wrote, and then I simply replaced the lower octave left-hand stuff with samples, and he's pulling it off really well. It's a lot of fun. So when we get out there, the plan, I've got some updates to do in main stage. I loaded all of their samples for the whole show, including the new ones that I cut a little earlier today, onto a thumb drive. We're going to load those in. I need to edit some instruments around a little bit, and then I'm actually going to reprogram the second half of their ballad, because for some reason main stage has been doing this weird thing where for that particular sampler instrument, I've got a velocity processor on there where it should be kicking out the samples at max volume, but they're just so low, I don't really know how to fix it. So I'm just gonna delete that and do a new one. And then beyond that, we're going to get the Wi-Fi router hooked up, so I've got control over the X32, and that will also give me control over, or wireless control over their laptop as well, so I can sit up front and balance the new samples that we're going to be putting in. So I've got a bit of a drive ahead of me here. Again, it's just coming up on 3:30. I will meet you guys when we get to rehearsal. Okay, so get your sheet music, get your pencil. We're gonna kind of jot this in. So where we program these in is going to be a little bit weird because all your notes already have sounds on them for this particular patch. So we got to get a little creative here. So the first one we're going to put on C sharp or D flat right here. So that should be the measure 21 beat 3, I think it was. So we're going to do D flat, and let me load that in real quick. All right, the next one, which is on letter C, measure 22 beat 1. That's going to go on E natural. So show me where those new samples are. We got one on C sharp, E natural, and F sharp. And then let's hit the C1 and hear that new impact sound in there. There's that one, and then what about C natural right there? Sweet. So it's just got a blah kind of sound. So just make sure that when you guys are plugging in, that you're following the same procedure every time, right? I trust that you are, but just to reiterate, like, computers are weird, man. Like, they're not as easy to troubleshoot as a microphone. So just make sure that when you guys are setting up and we're moving you're tearing down the same way and setting back up the same way every single day. Very important to make sure that the laptop, they're dumb. They don't do anything that they're not told to do. So if we change things on the machine, it's just going to do whatever, right? So we got to make sure that we have consistency so that this thing does.
And Bam, would you just run back one set, please? Bam, run back one set. 3 sets, 3 sets.
Alright, y'all, that was an insane rehearsal. So, Aledo is a pretty competitive, pretty serious program, and every group is, right? But I know in particular, Aledo, they're going to be at BOA this weekend, and they're a big group, and the head director out there, Mr. Joey Paul, he's been out there for a long time. He's got it dialed in really well. He's got their processes pretty well dialed in, and tonight was just pretty insane. I hope I was able to get some cool clips of what was going on. A lot of the work that I did was primarily in main stage, so there wasn't too much to look at. But I will say that we had percussion, well, not percussion, not even percussion ensemble. We had subsectionals, so we had front ensemble over in like a shade zone, and I pulled the synthesizers over, loaded in those samples, went over the parts with the kids, and then we plugged back in, and it went by so fast. Most of the changes, again, had to be in main stage, and then like by the time the front ensemble moved, and by the time we were scheduled to be with the band, we only had a half hour left. So I thought we were going till 7 tonight, but it was actually only till 6:30, and so I just didn't have as much time. So like I basically had a full run through. I had like a couple reps of a few phrases of the show, and then a full run to try and hit all of my, the list of stuff. To add to it, they recently had one of their 2 QSC subwoofers returned from the repair shop. So with the added secondary sub, it was just like, oh my God, bass low end city. And I had to make some adjustments with the auxiliary output. So I have their X32 feeding the subwoofers through a separate output. We had to make some adjustments, and then beyond that, it was just trying to get those soloists dialed in. But the problem is that we didn't really have time to go through like I was hoping we would tonight. So essentially I had to sort of map it out in my head of what changes need to be made. So like on the fly during the full run through, I was basically pulling up the channels on the iPad, the 2 soloist mics, looking at where the gain setting was, trying to check where the reverb settings were, and just make notes about which scenes needed to get changed, and it was pretty much all of them. And I had to leave that plan with the percussion directors to implement this week because we just don't have time. So as hectic as it was, and as little time as I had with the group to really make those changes, sometimes that's what it is. The group has their big picture season-long goals that they're trying to make sure that they hit, working on visual, cleaning stuff up. And oftentimes it's the electronic consultant's job to work in between that, especially since I've been going out there every week. It's not like I can demand every single one of those rehearsals be electronics rehearsals, because not all of them are stadium rehearsals in the first place. So sometimes there is a compromise between being able to do electronics the quote right way and sort of having to do it on the fly and just rely on experience to get it as far along as you can, simply because of the weekly and season-long goals of the group. Stuff doesn't always go as smoothly and as easily as you want it to, and that's okay. You know, I mean, that's just part of the job. I will say that the synthesizer kids that Aledo has, they're doing so great. The kid that plays all of the triggers that I got a quick clip of earlier is hitting all the sound design samples. He's just doing a great job. It's awesome. And then they've got the awesome Jeff Ostemore, who arranged the rest of the percussion book. So it's just really well written. It was a ton of fun to do sound design for, and I'm going to be consulting with Aledo through October. I'll be joining them at BOA here in Dallas, probably going on the field with them, double checking everything like speaker angles and stuff like that. But today was just a crazy day, y'all. It was just a busy day, and there was a lot to get done with not a lot of time. And you know, like I said, you do the best you can, and sometimes if you don't get to it all, you just have to make as detailed a list as you can and be prepared to do a video call with the staff later that week. So yeah, I would say in terms of overall productivity for today's rehearsal, it was maxed out, and that's why I couldn't really get that many video clips, is because it was just non-stop today. So again, thank you all so much for taking some time out of your day to hang out with me and join me for the adventure here. It certainly is. Tomorrow, episode number 3, we will be taking a day trip down to Austin, working with the Crockett Cougar Band at Crockett High School, Crockett Early College in South Austin. My dear friend Brianna Minky is the head director down there. We're going to be fixing a lot of stuff, so I've got all day, pretty much all day tomorrow, basically noon to 7 with them. And so we'll probably get some good clips of how things are set up and of rehearsal and all that good stuff. They've got a much different setup than the two groups we've worked with yesterday and today, and that is all right. That's one of those things I try to really pride myself on, is not only being able to work with the large groups, but also the medium and small groups, because everybody's using electronics nowadays. That's what you do to stay competitive, pretty much. And even those smaller ensembles need the help, and they deserve to sound just as great as the big ones. So we'll be working with a much smaller group tomorrow, but tonight Aledo High School went as well as it could have. So please feel free to hit that like button. Definitely subscribe if you're not already to the channel. I've got more content coming. Thank you so much again. Like, subscribe, and definitely tune in for tomorrow's episode. I will see you guys then.